Dublab.
Hello and welcome. My name is Cooper, and you're listening to my show here in LA on Dublab Radio. Today I'm really excited to welcome one of my favorite musicians, Ned Russin. Coming from the hardcore scene of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, Ned made a name for himself through a handful of bands like Title Fight, Disengage, Bad Seed, and Stick Together, dating back to the early 2000s. But over the last few years as a solo artist, Ned has been exploring new sounds and ideas under the name of Glitterer. His debut LP called Looking Through the Shades came out last year in 2019. In addition to this interview, Ned kindly compiled and mixed 50 minutes of music he's been feeling, so stay locked in after the chat for some records. Hope you enjoy.
I guess I just wanted to ask what life was like for you at the moment, like just to start off, like how have things been since your last gig, basically?
The last gig ended very interestingly. I was on tour in Europe with Turnstile, Gag, and One Step Closer. We went into quarantine.
Okay.
So we were in the UK, and I'm trying to remember what city we're in. I think we're in Glasgow the night that the Trump travel ban got announced.
Okay, so you're kind of like, what happens now?
Yeah, and we had whatever, maybe 5 shows after that point. We basically decided to finish up in London, so we played 2 shows after that, which were like good but awkward.
Because people knew that this was kind of setting in and there was this weird vibe.
Yeah, but at the same time,
no one knew what was around the corner either, so
yeah. And also like the US and the UK were like the 2 slowest acting countries.
Yeah, so that was kind of in your favor for getting home.
Yeah, definitely. But in terms of like the atmosphere at the shows, it made for like an interesting, kind of weird space. And that like people were still like moshing and singing along, and I didn't really understand how to interact with people, if I should be interacting with people.
Right.
And we kind of all still felt invincible. But basically, we wrapped up in London. We came home, had some complications there. We had to change our flights at the last minute to fly into like an airport that had a COVID checkpoint, essentially.
Oh, wow.
And so we flew in, and that was like the middle of March. Quarantine for 2 weeks. Some of the guys in Turnstile actually got COVID.
Oh, no.
So, took quarantine pretty seriously, and then basically like sat around for months.
Yeah. It's probably like the longest time you've been home in one place in quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, I was home for I went back to school in early 2016, and I started back like full time.
Yeah.
But even then, I would like travel.
Yeah, like you still had blocks of stuff throughout.
Yeah, I was still touring, even if it was just like a weekend or something.
Yeah, I guess so.
But yeah, this was like home with no plans, nothing to do, kind of seeing how everything's gonna unfold. That like led into George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and then like the entire like country
totally
kind of getting out in the streets, and then that like changed the mood entirely, obviously, and then that led to like more sitting around and more thinking in like a weird, I don't know, I feel like everybody was kind of like in a weird place at that point. And then basically that led up to like a month ago, me just like kind of sitting around really unsure of like what the world was like and what the future of the world is going to be. And then I got a job.
Oh.
And so
amazing.
I've been working in a record store for the last like month with a bunch of friends of mine, which is really nice. But cool. I like have a normal schedule now.
That helps a lot right now.
Yeah, totally. And so I'm like just going to work, still kind of unsure of what's going on. But
that's cool.
I don't know. it's a really weird time.
It
And
totally. I mean, the job, that sounds great too, but I think that structure and that, like, I don't know, sense of routine back in your life is probably really helpful, because me personally right now, with all of this like time on my hands, it's kind of overwhelming in a way. Like, I think too much
yeah,
and don't really get anything done.
yeah. I mean, the beginning of quarantine was like productive, but also I felt there was an end date.
Yeah, I think like the early stages of this, you have this mindset where you're like, I'm free of distraction and we're going to be home for a little while. This is so great. I can focus on whatever my thing is. But
Yeah,
then that obviously fades, and then you enter this other, I don't know, state of lethargy or something.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like reading 2 to 3 books a week. I was writing a bunch of songs. I was recording. I was like doing all this stuff, and then like I felt like it was going to be, I don't know, sometime in May, like everything was kind of go back to normal.
Right, right. Or
For
like
whatever
summer,
reason.
summer. We're good for summer.
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah, like by May we'll be good. And
yeah,
then May rolled around and it's like, no, we're not good. And then like the shit hit the fan. And then it
totally.
was, you know, every like all kind of things coming to a head at once. And it was just like, I don't know. It was just so much to sift through on
Totally.
like on every level. And then like the come down from that was way harder and
Mm.
like way like more melodramatic and dramatic than like, I don't know, any sort of, I don't know, post-tour depression and like weird like liminal kind of like state I've ever been in.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a really heightened sense of like disillusionment, but not with your craft, but like the world in this like greater sense. And it can like, I find it hard personally to like be creative when that's kind of weighing me down. I think some
Yeah,
people can channel that into whatever they do, but I think right now, obviously, is just kind of, it's like on a different level.
yeah, totally. It's hard to like, I don't know, just make sense of what's
Yeah,
going on, you know? And like you have to do that before you can get to your other stuff, before you can like sit in a room and be creative. I feel like, at least for
I think
me,
that I think that's true. I think like I would normally be really hard on myself during a situation like this, but I think now, like, I don't know, you kind of have to like forgive yourself for going through like a period of nothing where you're kind of I don't know, digesting things, I guess.
Yeah,
And then at that point things become more clear, hopefully. But tell me about
yeah,
the
yeah.
job. What's up with the store? Where are you right now anyway?
I'm in DC. I've been in DC for about a year now, a little over a year now, I guess.
Oh, cool. What prompted the move?
I moved here. My girlfriend lives here, so I moved in with her.
Nice.
Um, I'm not actually in the physical record store. I'm in a warehouse.
Okay.
But I'm at Joint Custody, which is a great record store in DC, specializing in everything. It's run by the guys from Lion of Judah and Give, if you're familiar with
Yeah,
those.
yeah, and Shining Life's involved with the store as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm basically like helping out with website stuff at the moment, and shipping and just kind of like whatever needs help with.
I
I help.
mean, record store was the first thing that came to mind when I was like thinking of like what could I do for now. But
Yeah,
like, that's awesome, and people are still buying music, and that's cool.
yeah. It's also, I don't know. It's a nice place to be just because it's uh it's a nice community of people who are all like-minded and who are all, I don't know, interested in cool things. So I've been learning a lot in just like the short time that I've been there, just been
Yeah,
exposed to a bunch of new music and, had, I don't know, cool conversations. And it's just a good excuse to like get to check out a bunch of new stuff that I haven't really had the time to check out before.
totally. I mean, apart from like going back to school, you're pretty much back in Wilkes-Barre between touring, right?
I lived in New York for like 5 years before
Oh,
this.
that's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I went to school in New York,
That's right. That's right.
and so I
Um,
moved there like 2015. I went back to school 2016, and then I stuck around until last year.
right.
But before that, I was in Wilkes-Barre my whole life.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure at this point, like in your life, it's probably like exciting to live in a different place again.
Yeah, it's interesting. Um, Getting to tour and having, the opportunity to see a lot of places is really great, but you also don't really get to,
Have a life at home.
Yeah, that, and also like the places that you get to see, you don't really get to know.
Yeah, you see the airport and the hotel.
Yeah, yeah, it's like, it's the best way to travel. You get to see
Totally.
a bunch of stuff, but you don't get to see anything at all. So,
And then when you're home, you're kind of wiped and you just want to chill until the next time you have to leave again.
yeah, and so the cities that I've lived in post Wilkes-Barre are cities that I've enjoyed going to on tour, but like never really hung out in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, getting to live in New York was awesome. It's really grown to be probably my favorite city in the States, and a place I'd love to get back to. But and then coming to DC, it's like there's a bunch of people in DC that I've always been friends with. There's a really cool scene. There's a bunch of cool stuff, and getting to know the city better has also been like really rewarding and really cool. Just because, and it's just, I don't know. It's almost like something kind of like fun to do. I don't know, to get to.
Yeah, it's like kind of like that makes everything exciting and like fun again, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and like
Figuring things out, learning where your spots are and kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that kind of stuff like is I don't know. It's just kind of like nice. It's like,
Well, I mean, it's inspiring too because I feel like that's just the momentum that, like, I don't know, keeps life moving forward, and you can get kind of complacent in one place for too long.
Yeah, which is funny because when I was a kid, like I never thought I'd leave Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah, and when you were traveling so much, you were just stoked to be home when you weren't on the road, I assume.
Yeah, yeah.
So you weren't thinking like, where else would I want to live? I guess.
Yeah, place has like really taken a different kind of like meaning for me over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a different point in your life for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, when did you start writing the songs that would become the first Glitter EP, and were you already conceptualizing a new project at that time? Or was it kind of just like, I'm writing these songs, I don't know what they're going to be for?
I mean, so the Glitter record came out, and the first Glitter record came out in August 2017.
Yeah.
And I probably started writing them in like May or something, maybe a little bit earlier.
Oh, cool.
And like the origin of Glitter as a band is like, I don't know, it's like a kind of start and restart kind of story where I was like working on stuff a bunch, scrapping it, putting it away, trying it again, and it all kind of based around this like MIDI keyboard that I bought. And I like had these kind of big grand ideas because originally I bought it. It's like, okay, now I have access to like all these different sounds that I, haven't been able to really use before. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna write like a Beach Boys record. Like I'm gonna do like a crazy big arrangement, like pop, like song with strings and like key changes and all this stuff. And then I sat down to do that, and I was like, that's actually really hard. And I don't know how to do it. And like I would scrap all that, and I would come back to it. And like basically, it took me realizing like, okay, I don't want to do like a big thing, like a really extravagant kind of thing. I wanted to be like a simple, like just do like a punk band,
Yeah, for sure.
And so it's like, okay, when I figured that out, things started to fall into place, and I wrote like a batch of songs, like pretty quick, kind of like figuring it out along the way, figuring out how to use like recording programs a little bit better, and still not that good, and just like figuring out what kind of like the songs would be and like what the energy would kind of be. And then I don't know, there wasn't like really much conceptualizing until like it really was a real thing, I feel like. Like once I had the songs out and I started to play, then it's like, okay, now I think I know what the band is and what I want it to sound like and what I want it to be like. And then as soon as like I kind of had that idea, then I'd write another batch of songs and I would completely throw that idea on its head. And I would kind of start over. But at that time I wouldn't be starting from scratch, so it'd be easier,
Yeah.
It's like every batch of songs were more fully realized, more conceptual, more, I don't know, more real, it felt like. And so I just like kind of kept springing forward from like a different starting block each time.
Well, then from that point onward, had your writing process changed because you were now in this like, I don't know, mentality of like, I'm doing this particular project with these songs? Like, I don't know, I'm just compared to working with bands and kind of bouncing ideas off of other people, I'm sure the dynamic changed for yourself.
Yeah, totally. And that was a really kind of difficult thing to figure out, particularly because even though I've written songs before and brought songs to a band that have been completely finished, it's like the I don't know, just the way you like check one another, even
Yeah.
if it's doing something, is like affirming. And so to not have that at all was like kind of, I don't know, scary in a way. And so, and on top of that, it's like when you start a new band and you're trying to figure out like what you're sounding like, and if that sounds good, that adds a whole other layer of like fear and like uncertainty on top of that, and anxiety. And so
It's like kind of a complete start over in a way.
yeah, it's like, even though I've written songs by myself, it was like learning how to write songs by myself for real this time.
And then walk on stage alone and like, I don't know, start like warming up into these shows, playing like earlier slots than, other shows that you play and stuff, and kind of having that like fear again was probably, I don't know, maybe kind of cool in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I not like.
Well, it's a challenge.
Yeah, and there's like, I don't know, there might be like a sick ego part of that in there, but it's also like I like just doing something new and different. I like there not really being much pretense. I like having the opportunity to do something weird and just like kind of going with it.
Where does being self-conscious fit into the mix here? Like, is this like a thing that you still deal with this, or maybe like after the album and playing more, you kind of get more comfortable?
I mean, I feel like this self-consciousness is like a layered thing with this, because the live aspect of the band is like, I had to get over like a serious hump at the beginning. Because it's like, I before the record was even out, I agreed to play a first show.
Right.
And that was mainly just like, I'm committing to doing this in order to like push myself to get the songs done, in order to like to really commit to this idea. So I actually, I don't know, I make this band real.
How far ahead of the show did you confirm this?
Maybe like a month.
Maybe so you had like a good couple of weeks of being like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah, I had like 2 songs to finish.
Okay.
And I never played live, and it's like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And also my idea of playing live at that point was something that I actually couldn't figure out how to do, because I didn't want to just sing. I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna like play bass, but then it's like, well, I have these songs where it's just bass and then like the keys come in at the end, and I don't know how to figure that out. Like, what am I going to play with in-ear monitors and have a click track the entire time, and then figure out how to program a click track? And I was like, well, I guess I'm just singing. And so I like doing that and just getting up on stage the first time and just like looking out at people who were it was just like my friends. It was a small show. It was just like Fiddlehead and myself. And so
did that make it even scarier, or was it? I can't tell what that was.
Yeah, kind of.
So I kind of feel like going into a room of strangers, you're kind of just like whatever, but people know who you are, so that kind of adds another layer to it.
Yeah.
And I was also going to ask about that, as people know you from other things, and like, does that kind of get to you when you're, I don't know, thinking about Glitter? Like, I feel like that, like having a separate identity is probably really important to you.
Yeah, I think that's like the second layer of like the self-consciousness thing.
Got it.
It's weird being in a band that I guess like people like, I don't know. It's like, I don't even particularly know how to talk about it. It's not weird to be in a band. It's not weird to play music. But it is slightly strange to sometimes be at a show and notice that somebody knows who I am and notices me and feels some sort of way about it. And there is some sort of like pretense built into it, and some sort of like, I don't know, idea of what I am or something. And that's like the hard stuff about it, It's like,
but half the point of this is proving that you're not this one-dimensional person.
Yeah, to a certain extent, but it's like, I don't really need
to prove that at all anyway.
Yeah. And I also like don't really need to do that through music. It's like,
people know you, they know you, and that's that.
Yeah. And it's like, hopefully there's like a nuance enough in like listening to any kind of music that you kind of don't believe that the person is just one singular aspect of that song. Like every song has so many different things going on with it that it's like every person is insanely complicated and interesting. I just hope that I don't have to get that across. I hope that like people just understand that about every type of music and every song and every artist, you know?
No, of course. I mean, most of these things like records and stuff are like, chapters of people's lives based on their experiences and, things that have come to them. And I feel like it would be silly to define somebody by just one of those things.
Yeah. And even then it's like, I mean, for the most part, you're working with people.
Yeah.
And so it's not just one person, it's like 4 to 5 to however many different people are involved, like lives at that time and that intersection. And that's really interesting.
That's true.
Even with Glitter, even it's just me, it's like there's still different things intersecting here, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the timing is interesting too, because didn't this start when you were in school or?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's got to be some sort of like, I don't know, energy being transmitted from that environment that kind of made its way into the songs maybe.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, do you probably find a lot of inspiration out of, you were studying creative writing, right?
I did, yeah. Yeah. I mean, those kind of conversations at school were really enlightening in a way. And there's like, I don't know, a certain area of the brain I feel like that all that kind of stuff lives in. And there were definitely new things that were brought into that territory that I was able to tap into. And some that I was like very conscious of bringing them into it and kind of thinking about, I don't know, the songs and the relation to me in the relation to, I don't know, people's perception of me and to my past and to other things. It's like all those things were I don't know, kind of floating around at that time. And so it was interesting to kind of like think about it and play with it, but not try to just submit. Because that's the other thing too. It's like, it's, I don't know. I turned 30 this year and I was like dreading turning 30 when I was like 23.
Of course. That's like old when you're 23.
Yeah. And it's like, man, like I don't want to be old and I don't want to like do this and whatever. And now that I'm 30, like, I mean, turning 30, like didn't bother me at all. Like I it's fine. I don't care.
Yeah.
But it was like, I still, there was a point before this was like, I don't want to be defined by what I did when I was 23.
Of course.
And now I'm 30 and like, and now I don't care about that either. But it's like, I'm not going to stop trying to create just because I have something that is, I don't know, difficult to compare. It also, as I say it out loud, it also starts to feel like very melodramatic or.
No, not at all. I mean, I was really curious because when you think about like songs that you wrote at that point in your life, are you able to like recontextualize that stuff to apply to like where you are now? Or is it kind of just like, I don't relate to that at all anymore?
There are certain things where it's like hard for me to relate to it, but I can perfectly place where those feelings were coming from. I can listen back to a song and at the very least think like, wow, I was, I felt differently back then. And I also feel like that's like an important thing to understand. And also like, I realize like I'm fortunate enough to be able to look back on this very like concrete specific thing and be like, these songs that I wrote at this age were representative of how I felt at that time. I mean, I guess people can journal or people can look back even now, like I guess you could look back on old social media posts or something and like see what pictures you posted, how you interacted with other people. But it's like, here is like a document of my song at that time. And that's like a nice thing to have. But I also, it's like, I don't want to say the point is to not be the same way, because it's I don't want to like criticize. I don't want to criticize the idea of like change as a necessity, or rather, no, I don't want to criticize the idea that like change is a lack of change is like, I don't know, bad, but it's like, I'm not looking back at these things to like show that I'm better now.
Right. It's kind of a reminder of like the path that you've taken, I guess. And
yeah, and it's just, things are different, and that's just, I'm not like regretful for how I used to feel, and I'm not like, at the same time, I'm also not prideful for how I used to feel. It's just, it is that's the way that I felt at that time, and that's like perfectly valid. And I feel like all those emotions that anybody feels are valid, you know?
of course, yeah. Something you mentioned social media, but I kind of wanted to ask, like, I guess you didn't really have to worry so much about promoting yourself on social media, like in the early days, because A, it wasn't a thing, and B, like, at least, I don't know, in like a smaller, like hardcore community, like people, like the community kind of like supports itself. Like you don't really need to, I don't know. Now you have this new responsibility, I guess, or like weird, like social pressure to like engage with this stuff yourself.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I don't particularly care for social media. I think it's, I don't know, it is like a great time sucking tool, but at the same time, it's like, it's used against people. It's just a tool to sell things. And I'm not really interested in that. I'm not really interested in having things sold to me, and I'm not interested in selling things to people. But the thing is, when Title Fight started using social media, like it was a completely different world.
Right.
Like we booked our first tour over MySpace, and that was really actually helpful. And it was a thing too where you would post a bulletin, and it would be seen in real time, and you like really, I mean, you could not look at it, but it would show up if you were following that account or whatever, you know?
Exactly.
So it's like we would post a thing like looking for shows, and everybody would see that. And then when we booked the tour, it was like, here are the shows, and everybody that followed us had to see that. Now it's like a weird thing where I had like a long kind of debate with myself about whether to use social media, how to use it, and you know, all these things before like I really started to take glitter, like, I don't know, I don't want to say more seriously, but like it's important to give people like the information from you. I think that's a great tool. I think that's awesome. But the thing is, I thought, you know, because like Title Fight had worked for however long to get
its own organic, natural following.
Yeah.
Just from like playing shows, engaging with the community, you guys had a venue, like there were all of these things that contributed to people following you guys without having to like be sold anything.
Yeah. I thought I would be able to tap into that. And it was way harder to use than I thought it would be, just because of the way that the like social media has changed. You know, like the Glitter Instagram account is like the first Instagram account I've ever like really used or had on my phone. Like I never had access to the Title Fight account. Never used it before really. And so like I had the Glitter Instagram account, but I refused to download the app on my phone just because I thought like this will help me to not use it. And also like, I don't really want to use it as like a person. It's still something like, I don't know. I think it's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's also changed the way people like consume and discover music, and there are a lot of pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
But,
there's a lot of nuance there, you know, like it's not wholly bad.
No, not at all. Let's see. What I wanted to ask was, were there any super formative or pivotal hometown shows that you saw that left a huge impact on you growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try and like narrow it down to just one or two, but there's a label from the Wilkes-Barre area called Walk All Night, which was ran by Bob Mack, who
Fuzzy Numbers guy, right?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And they put out a couple records, and they had like a 1-year anniversary showcase, and that was Blacklisted, Cold World, Iron Boots, I think One Up, maybe Crime Mysterio, because they put out a record with them. It was just like for the time, and I mean still now, like a lot of those bands, like it was a crazy lineup. It was a really cool thing to see, particularly because it was like, this is a show that includes local bands, that is, you know, a show done in celebration of a local label, and just kind of all these things. And like the show was just so good.
Yeah. What year was that, do you think?
That was probably 2004 or 5. Because I think the Cold World 7-inch came out in 2004. That was also the time, you know, when like I'd been going to shows and I'd be like involved in music, but I was like 13 years old. And so, and at that time I was like 15 and I was like, okay, this is like actually what I'm into. I had like found bands that I liked by myself. I had like really started like digging into stuff. And that was like a really, I don't know, just an important moment for me in my life of like feeling like I was involved in hardcore. That was just like a really good show. And then the other thing that I always think of is I'm the Avalanche. Used to play Wilkes-Barre all the time for some reason. And we went to see them, I think, before we had even heard their record. But it was a thing of like, we loved the movie Life.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, okay, this is like, I don't know, the chance to see like this guy that we think is really cool is like new band. And so we went, and I don't know if we played the first time they played the area, but like Title Fight played one of their earlier shows, and we were legit like 14 or 15 years old. And they were like really cool to us. They were like, they talked to us like we were normal human beings, not like we were like,
Some
I
kid.
don't know. Yeah. They just were like really cool to us. And they like, we invited them to like a party at our friend's house, and they came, and like they just kept coming back. And like every time it was like, it felt like it was, I don't know, it went from like being this person who I listened to their records to being like a guy who I would see every couple months and who I would like shoot the shit with and who like became my friend.
Well,
And
it's
that was
really good for that wall to be broken down at that age, because it kind of eliminates this whole like idolization of like people around you, you know, like it goes to show that these people that, you know, we look up to are guys like you and me that, you know.
Yeah, that's like exactly what that did. Whereas like the Walk All Night show was kind of different because my brother Alex plays in Cold World, and
Yeah.
like I had that connection to that scene forever, and that felt like very normal to me even at a young age, just because it was like those are the guys even before I was like really into music were like hanging out at my parents' house.
Right, you're just your brother's friends that were your friends too.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, that's like totally normal. But then when it was like when I had bands that I got into through my brother who seemed to be like, I don't know, like impossible to reach, when I realized like, oh, those are like just normal people too. Because it's weird, even though I had that experience with punk and hardcore at a young age, and I understood that like it is a very normal kind of like average, ordinary, like everyday community, it still felt like there were people within that were out of bounds, you know, that were like larger than life. I shortly also had that like idea kind of like thrown out the window, and I'm like, those experiences were, I don't know, were formative, and also just like they were really important to all of us. I feel like it was like also like a really exciting an era of the band where like it felt like we were going from being like a local band to like a band.
What year would you say that was around?
That was probably like 2005.
Okay. That must have been like the turning point where things were kind of bubbling in a way where maybe you're playing on weekends more and like out of town a little bit.
Yeah, it was around that time where it's like we went from being, I was talking about this recently, and because somebody asked me how many times we played the venue I was talking about, Cafe Metropolis. That's like where Title Fight played our first show, and I was trying to like just do like quick mental math. I was like, okay, we probably played there at least once a month, every month for like 3 years, and then in like 2006 to 2007 we started playing it like twice a month, and then like, you know, like we did that like every month until whatever, like 2011 or something when they closed. I think it was just this thing like we went from being like, okay, here's another band that we could just throw on shows, and it was the era when there was just like a bunch of bands playing all the time.
Totally.
Like that was, I don't know, a cool thing to do.
For sure.
And then we became,
I mean, that was the whole time period that when people talk to you about Wilkes-Barre, they're kind of like referring to this like idea they have in their head of this like really like insane show schedule.
Yeah, which is weird because I mean, yeah, they were good hardcore shows, but like we were playing, I don't know, with like touring ska bands or something.
Oh yeah, at that point you were just like the house band, I guess.
Yeah, but it was crazy because Wilkes-Barre like had all like multiple alternative underground genres like happening at the same exact time, and there's a lot of overlap for sure, but you know, we were doing like whatever kind of show you could play at that point, and like there were like really good hardcore shows going on, but we didn't get asked to play those until like we started booking them ourselves. And that, like that was a completely different era.
Yeah.
But, the shows with like whatever. I mean, the first show we ever played was like a good hardcore show. It was with Lapis and Frostbite. And that's because I emailed Bob Mack. And I was like, hey, I see you have this show happening. Can we, like, I have a new band. Can we play it? And he put us on. But like at that point, we just like played whatever shows we could. And then those shows also happened. But like, we weren't on those shows, for a long time.
Right. But that was kind of like interesting about what you guys did was that I felt like that, me personally, I discovered a lot of bands through Title Fight and like seeing people that you were touring with and like affiliated with. And I always appreciated how like diverse and eclectic that usually was. Like, yeah, there'd be like crazy hardcore shows, but you'd also be playing with like, a spectrum of different artists.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of reasons why Wilkes-Barre had a scene like that. I mean, it like came from the late 90s when kind of all underground music was like countercultural, rooted in punk ethics and like kind of weird. And it was all like everyone supported each other, which was really cool. And so we had, whatever, like fire hall emo shows. We had like your kind of metallic, like Panic chords, weird shit. We had like your like classic kind of capital H hardcore bands, whether it be like late 80s New York hardcore kind of stuff or like straight edge hardcore kind of youth through stuff. And then there was like the ska bands and like the pop punk bands and like the kind of nerdy stuff. Like all those things were happening at the same time. And then when we came up, there was still like the remnants of that scene, but it was kind of like starting to segregate a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, even across the board, like generally speaking, I feel like that point in time there was like a generational like shift. Like,
yeah, but then it also felt like our group of friends in Wilkes-Barre were kind of like the last ones to be like, I don't know, not the last ones. That's too grand a statement, but it was like it felt like after us, like things were a lot more like compartmentalized. I think people still had like eclectic tastes, and then it got to a point where like now it's like you listen to everything and everybody listens to everything, and that's cool because it's all available and it's so easy to like get. In like 2003, we listened to like weird bands because we got into music through my brother who came up to shows, like going to shows in the late 90s when it was like that. Yeah. And then by the time like 2005, when we were like booking the shows and like even like more so 2008 and 9 when we like started to really book shows and like started to like run a venue and stuff.
Yeah.
It felt like that was like when things like, okay, everything kind of has to go together. It has to make sense because that's like, it's important to have like a curated kind of idea of the scene.
For sure.
Where like we kind of came up in a different world and it felt like that kind of fell off for a little bit. And now it seems like that doesn't matter at all, which is cool,
Yeah, anything goes. And I think people are a lot more open-minded, like you said now too.
Yeah. But there was definitely a period where like that wasn't the case,
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, we would mainly like book our own shows is like really what it was. And if there happened to be a band coming through that was, I don't know, that we were really close with, maybe we'd book that too. But we had a friend, Matt Wren, who he is one of the people who runs Dark Medicine now. He basically ran everything because we were on the road so much. Our involvement with the venue, which was Redwood Art Space, was I think we put up like the money for the deposit, and we kind of bankrolled it at the beginning, and we were also like just kind of involved as, I mean, we didn't call ourselves volunteers, but like that's what we were, we didn't have it like set up as nicely as like a
Gilman or something.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. It was really cool. That I think that was like a really great time, and it's cool too because there's a bunch of people that we're still friends with now that those shows are like their first shows, whereas it's weird for us because that's when we were kind of, I don't know, we were trying to recreate the scene that we grew up in. And we were looking back to, even though it was just a couple years before, we were looking back to all these venues in Wilkes-Barre and all these bands, and like this was like when it was really cool, and we need to get back to it. And then the reasons that came up, and they feel the same way about that time that we do about, you know, about our heyday.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's funny, like, talking about it like a heyday is funny. Just with, like, how well documented a lot of this stuff is, like, especially during this quarantine period, like, I've been watching so many shows on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be said for, you know, the ease of access to information from that time. There's a lot of cool stuff. I'm like, there's stuff that like I'm happy was saved, because like who would have thought to film, you know, whatever show in the middle of nowhere? Like that's cool. There are other things where it's like, man, I wish that had been lost. And also it's like when you're like 19, you're, you know, when you look back on how you dressed or what.
Dude, I do not want to see a video of me at 19.
Dude, it's bad. But at the same time, it's like, you know, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, it's like, it's not, I shouldn't think it's bad.
No,
you know, it's, that's who I was at the time. And like, that's, but yeah, it is, there's a lot of stuff out there, you know?
The last hardcore show I went to was a bunch of local bands that I had never met before, but I was so shocked that everyone I spoke to was like 20 or 21. Going to shows and stuff, like, I'm sure like yourselves, like you're used to just being like those kids that were there.
Yeah, it's funny too, because, and
I'm not even spinning this like we're old now. It's just like we're not the youngest in the room anymore.
No, totally. It's the thing that I often like encounter too is that I feel like my social circle has remained largely the same since I was a kid, and that's like due to the fact that I got into music through my brother, who was in a social scene that was like pretty established, and then I became like friends with those guys. And then the people that I started to come, like, that I went to shows with, like, became my friends. And then we kind of, like, started our own thing. And those, like, relationships have always stayed in place. Like, when I'm hanging out in a group of people in Wilkes-Barre, it's usually, like, with those people. And it's like, okay, in my mind, it's like, okay, I'm still 15. And, like, whatever. Like, the older guys are, like, 20-something.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, I am not 15 anymore. It takes like interacting with like the younger kids to realize like, yeah, that's not the case, even though I feel that way. You know, the way that I have felt about the older guys, like I don't feel that way about myself. You know, like I felt like they were so cool and wise, and like they knew every band, and they like, you know, just like they were guys I looked up to and still do. You know, it's like I liked them, and I thought they like had a lot to you know, to offer us as, I don't know, whether it be music or just like the ways in which you conduct yourselves as like a person. And I feel like I'm still learning, and I have nothing to teach anybody else, you know. And I look at like younger kids, and it's like, you can't look at me like I looked at Dan Mills, because Dan Mills was like, I don't know. I mean, granted, Dan Mills was like an adult.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably like 25, like when I started hanging out with him, you know, which is so drastically different than, you know, being 15. I still look up to him as like a person who, I don't know, I feel like is cool. Like I don't have those things to offer anybody else, you know?
That's the self-conscious talking, not the real you. Well, this kind of goes to the next thing, kind of like on the reflecting the last 10 years or so. Triple B on Instagram has been posting like these throwbacks from earlier on in their catalog, and obviously the first thing that they posted was the Free Spirit demo.
Mm-hmm.
And
which wasn't the first release, but yeah.
Sorry?
Which wasn't the first release, but yeah.
Well, it was a bootleg initially.
Yeah, it's like a funny story. I think I mean there was a bootleg made of the tape like immediately. Like at the first Free Spirit show, there were I think 3 different copies of the tape being sold.
And was the No Tolerance split one of them?
Yeah. But Triple B had started, but they just never had Triple B like records #1.
Right, so it wasn't actually even the first release, right?
Yeah, so they had released a couple of records already, and then they just saved it for a band that they were going to do, and they just used it for Free Spirit instead.
But that release was important to you.
Oh yeah,
I think I did read another interview where you said something about it, but like even reading the comments on that post, people were like, this blazed the trail for so many amazing bands that like changed my life shortly after.
So, I mean, this is also kind of going back to what I was talking to you about before, like being, being aware of the scene through my brother, like, but also not being an active participant yet. So, like, I thought and think Mental is like one of the best bands of all time. They're so good. And I was like, I don't know, 15 when Planet Mental came out, and they broke up shortly after. And like, I got to play a show with them, with another band I did, and I saw them at Posse Numbers, and I just like bought all their records and their shirts and stuff. But it felt like they were like my brother's friends and not my friends. And like, I looked up to them and I thought they were cool, but it's like, these were guys from another town who I like don't interact with, who are like from a totally different world, because they were like, I don't know, they were just so different from the guys from Wilkes-Barre, But I thought they were so cool. And then I'm like, granted, like, now I'm friends with all them. Like, they're,
of course, yeah.
It's like not, I don't know. It's like, but I'm still kind of starstruck by them because it's like they just shaped my life so much at that age. And then Free Spirit comes along, and they are like direct descendants of Mental, and it's like they don't really sound alike, but it's like, okay, this is a band that's on Lock and Out, that pulls from like the obscure NYHC influences that Mental did, that are like goofy but very serious at the same time, and are like play both sides of the fence very well. And it's like, okay, this is my Mental, like these are the guys, like everything about it, like as soon as I heard it was just like, this is something like I want to be a part of. And the thing is, the Free Spirit demo came out like at the exact same time as the Disengaged demo, and I heard the Free Spirit demo and I was like, well, they did everything that I was trying to do better, so like there's like really not much point to like pursuing this, because I was already shown up, but they like, I just heard the demo and I fell in love with it. And then their first show was National Edge Day 2008, and I drove up with Hoodrak and Rifkin from Stick Together, and I literally like went to the show. I think they played first. I think it was like Free Spirit, No Tolerance were first and second.
Yeah.
And I just started moshing for both bands, like losing my mind. And then I became friends with them through that.
From that
like,
show?
From that show. They're just like, who's this kid that we've never seen before who's singing along and moshing? They reached out to me and we became friends, and like I gave them a fanzine, and like we stayed in touch, and it was just like, that's how like, like they that's how they really became like the Mental of my like life. It's like, it's that's like the thing that pulled me into that scene that I had already looked up to so much, that like they were the ones that like kind of made me feel like I was actually a part of it, like that, on top of them just writing music that I think is amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think like all this time later, and then you did a record with these guys that you met back then, or at least some of them, and on Locking Out too. It's kind of like a full circle kind of thing, but
yeah,
it's cool.
I mean, it's funny. I said this recently too. Is I've wanted to be on Locking Out since I was 15. And the show that I referenced before was a show with an old band that everybody from Title Fight and my friend Andy Saba, who is also in Bad Seed and Nails and is in some new bands now, were in. And we opened the show with Mental, and I was like, this is it. This is our big break. Like, we're going to play, and Greg's going to be so into us. We're going to cover Warzone, and then we're going to like be on Locking Out. And I was like playing the layout for the record in my head. And like, of course that didn't happen.
Right.
Like, we were a local band. And then like, whatever, literally 15 years later, like it finally came real. And it's like, this has been my dream for so long.
And it still resonated with you in the same way that you would have felt back then.
Yeah, it means like so much to me. Like, and also like on top of that, like it came from a band that started because I like, I met these new people in a different town, and we shared similar tastes, and like we mosh for each other's bands. Like, that's, I don't know. It's just like, and it boils down like, huge topics of like, I don't know, friendships to something like really tangible and simple. Here's a piece of plastic that shows a significant part of my life for the last 15 years.
100%. Did you start writing music with those guys like shortly after you met, or was it kind of like a later thing?
I guess, yeah, like we tried to do a band before we did Big Contest called Independence that had a song on the AHC comp.
Okay.
We actually covered that song on the Big Contest 7-inch now.
Which one?
But Blue Moon.
Oh yeah, because I think you guys have been playing that for a minute.
Yeah. That was a original Independent song. But like we had tried to do that. I think that's it with before Big Contest. But like we had just like been friends and like shared, I don't know, bands and like anytime we would do a record, like they would be the first people, like some of the first people I sent it to, and you know, vice versa. And so like we had that kind of relationship, and it was always kind of felt like we're going, like, you know, we should do a band together, but it was just kind of hard, mainly because of the distance. And then they had kind of like decided to do a new band, and it was going to be Kenny and Gil from Free Spirit, and then Alex Dow, who now plays in Fiddlehead on guitar. And they didn't have a bassist, and I was in Boston for a show, and I was like, you know, if you're looking for a bassist, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring, you know.
Okay.
And they were like, we weren't even thinking about that, but that would be really cool.
So,
and then like after that, I just started driving up there all the time to write and record and stuff, and it's, you know, slowed down quite a bit. We were never active really to begin with,
right.
but it was, I mean, we would play 2 to 3 shows a year.
And I missed the 2 or 3 shows you played this year. And
I'm sorry.
No, but that was the one I was like so bummed to miss. I was out of town, but it looked like it was fun. You guys were with like
Distort.
Yeah, and Distort, Stuff for Change, Fury. I think in one of the
Fury
days.
playing one show, yeah.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah,
and I see a flyer like that now. I'm just like, what was I doing?
Yeah, I mean, any footage or picture of any show now is just like, it hurts to look at, you know. It's like, I will never take it for granted again. Like I will never not mosh. I will never not like make the drive. It's like I just want to see live music so bad right now.
I watched a video that Advanced Perspective posted of Title Fight in LA in like 2015, I think, or 2014. It's a VHS recording. I guess that's always.
I think it might be 24. I don't know.
Yeah, it was 2014 because it was between the Coachella weeks.
It was, yeah.
And ever since then, I was like, I really hope there's footage of that. Like for some reason, like I just remember that night being particularly special.
Yeah.
And then, sure enough, like 1 month into lockdown, like that comes up. I'm just like, oh my god, this is.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like watching shows that I was a part of.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. It's probably kind of weird.
Yeah, it's not weird to like watch me. It is a little bit like, just because I like anybody, you're really critical of yourself.
I mean, when I'm listening to this radio show later, I'm gonna hate hearing my voice.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but I feel like I've gotten used to hearing myself sing. Like I can stand my singing voice. I don't like my speaking voice.
Right.
It sounds just like anybody. It sounds weird to you. But the thing is, like, I'm also kind of used to watching it be like, when we were kids, Ben would have somebody film every single Title Fight show, and we did that up until like 2010.
Oh, okay.
And we would go home right from the show, and we would watch it immediately. And
really?
And it makes you a better musician, but it's also like, oh, that move that I did, that looked stupid, and I'm not gonna do it again. And that thing that I did, oh, that was cool. And it's like that, like, kind of self-critique was like actually really valuable, I feel like.
Really?
And I feel like I didn't do it, but I should have done it at the beginning of Glitter, because there was like a whole new set of moves, and some of them were really bad, and you know, they had to go, and they did. But
well, now other people are posting that for you, so
yeah. But my main reason for not watching shows now is like I totally forget what the show actually looked like. You know, if I watch a video of a show, I remember the video rather than my own vision.
Oh, and you don't want that to get replaced.
Yeah, but the thing is, I have a bad memory anyway, so it doesn't matter. You know, it's like I have a vague memory of that show, but the video, like, isn't going to replace me, remembering sitting on the couch, like before the show. Or actually, there's a couple things from that show. I remember talking about music with the guy who was like I don't know what his title was.
The stage manager guy?
Something like that, yeah.
With was he like kind of like had a lot of tattoos and like a
and I remember he had like a basketball jersey on or something.
Yeah, I know that guy.
Yeah, he was
he's like a classic like sound dude at like venues around LA.
Yeah.
But there was something where like he was in a band that was like
I think he was like Good Clean Fun.
Yeah, it was something crazy like that.
It was like because we were talking and he's like, oh, like did you put like Miles Davis on this playlist or something? And I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah. That's so crazy. I used to play in Good Clean Fun. It was like something crazy like that. Like, I remember that. That's like interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I don't know. It's cool to have that like there to look back on if I ever think of the show again. But like you said,
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I'm happy that's archived.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, there's also like, I guess I've caught myself maybe like going too far down a nostalgia pit throughout this, and maybe there's like some danger in that. And I don't know, maybe spending more time thinking about the future might be a little bit more helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that was everybody's beginning of quarantine project, was like going through old folders and stuff. I got a lot of really cool photos and videos from the past, but at the same time, it's like we still have the rest of our lives to get through.
Yeah, it's like I don't want like this shouldn't turn into a thing where like our best days are behind us and like
because
I don't believe that.
Yeah, I don't either. And I hope nobody thinks that. It's just like, I mean, best is subjective to begin with.
That's true.
Like, but also, too, it's like anything has the ability to be the best. Anything has the ability to be enlightening. Anything has the ability to be profound. You just have to like sit down and kind of figure out how. And so it's like right now sucks, but there's something to be said for the moment. There's a lot to be discussed.
Yeah, of course.
But even on like a micro level, it's like I've talked to more people that I haven't talked to in a long time because of COVID. Like I've talked to so many people who just like reached out and like I haven't talked to them in years, and it's like I'm just checking in. Like that was really nice. Catching up with people that I haven't seen or spoken to in a long time was a really, really great experience. On top of that, we lost like two really close friends in our community in the last 2 months. The passing of Riley and Wade, and like hearing from everybody then was like the same kind of thing. And it's like that was like a completely different kind of thing because it was I don't know. It wasn't the same kind of energy when like I heard from people in April. Like this was the thing with like saying like I love you because I'm sad, whereas before I was like I'm saying I love you because I haven't said it in a while. And it's like I don't believe that you need two sides of the coin to understand a situation or to understand either idea, but it's like I had good and bad interactions in this year so far, and both of them have taught me it's like it's really important to talk to people, and it's good to reflect on those things. It's good to talk about the past, but you can't live in it.
No, you need to be present.
Yeah, it's like time's still moving.
Do you struggle with being present?
It's a good question. I'd like to say no, but that might not be true. I don't particularly care about looking at stuff from my own past. I like obviously old bands.
Yeah, of course.
I like kind of engaging in that kind of stuff, but I had a realization a couple of years ago, actually in school, during the 2016 election. I was in a class. It was a James Joyce class, and we were reading Ulysses. And I took it because I knew I would never read that book on my own, and I need someone to hold my hand through it. And the day after the election, we got an email from our professor and she wrote us saying, because a lot of people just like canceled class.
Yeah.
Like people said in New York, it was like it was similar to the day it was after 9/11. Like that's how bad it was. And our professor emailed us and she said, I know a lot of people are canceling class. I'm not going to do that. I think it's like we can learn a lot of lessons from looking about how Joyce thought about wars when he wrote the book in the early 1900s, and that can like lead us to see how we should think about the stuff now. And I kind of like read that email and I was like, I don't really think that's important, because what Joyce wrote and what anybody else wrote and whatever like anybody else like sang or whatever their art form was, it's like, yeah, they like were talking about similar themes that obviously still exist and have existed for all time, whether it be about power or love or any sort of like grand idea. Like, yeah, they were talking about that, but they weren't talking about this. They weren't talking about the 2016 election, about Trump being elected, about what that meant and about what that felt like. And there are things that we can discuss that were similar, but at that point I was like, I want to know what people that I live with, that I share like the timeline with, are thinking, because that's more important to me. How this affects like my neighbor, how this affects my parents, how this affects my loved ones, like those are the people whose opinions that I care about most right now. Granted, like Joyce is a genius and he has a lot of great things to say and it's worth reading, but we shouldn't look to those people in the past to define like our interpretations of the present. Like that's the conclusion that I came to at that moment. And it's like, since then I've like really tried to engage with a lot of new things and current things, because it's like, I want to be in a conversation and just, maybe there's some selfishness involved in this, because it's like, yeah, I create music currently and I would love for people to listen to it. But
do you feel like pressure currently to create because like artists aren't performing and like there aren't shows, so is there this thing in the back of your mind like I need like something to show?
Yes and no. I mean, I want to create just because it's like I just want to have something to do.
For
and
sure.
On top of that, it's like I don't know, the creation of music, specifically of melody, to me is like a very gratifying experience. And that is a really kind of, I don't know, it's like so cliche to say like, oh, it's like therapeutic, like, and the creation of music is my therapy, like the writing, like, like that, like that is like really great, especially in times like these, to be able to kind of go to that place. And I don't mean it as escapism, but it's like, it is more reflection, and having those tools is like really proved to be important, especially now. But as we were also saying earlier, like it's hard to get to that place, like you need to be in a certain zone, and it's hard to get into that zone because you have to clear so much baggage before you can get there, like.
Yeah, totally. And people think that it's like going to work and every day is like this like fruitful, productive thing, but 85% of the time that I come in this room, like I don't do anything.
Yeah.
But then that odd 20% is like next level when it happens.
Yeah. But at the same time, I believe it's still about showing up, like.
Yeah, exactly. Because even just coming into your space and like turning on your stuff and like noodling around or even listening back to like older ideas, that's still like exercising this thought process. And
yeah, I've been like hitting my head against the wall for like weeks now, going into my practice space being like, everything I write sucks, but I'm still going to go into the room. I'm still I felt this way so many times before. Every time I finish a record, it's like, I don't know how I was able to do that, but it's like, I didn't think I was going to be able to write this many songs again, but somehow I did it,
Yeah, for sure. Whenever I finish a track, I feel like that was the last thing I'll ever do. And I'm like,
yeah.
I really can't imagine like another song.
Yeah. But it's like, it's nice to get back in the zone and be like, oh yeah, I felt this way before.
Yeah.
And I got over it.
Do you have a zone at your place over there or like?
No.
Or you have a separate practice space?
I was like fortunate enough. I lived in a punk house that had a practice space in the garage.
Oh, perfect.
It was so sick, but we got booted from there in the middle of quarantine. The landlord sold the house. It sucked. But we moved the practice space, but it's also really unfortunate because it was like a community hub where so many bands practice there, and now we had to move the practice space to a private facility kind of, and now it's not open to the public anymore because it's like we need to make sure that everybody, like, we all have to chip in now. We need to make sure that we can get use out of it, unfortunately, and also it's COVID, so we don't want to share in the space with a bunch of people. So
of course,
maybe, I don't know, we can fix that down the line. That'd be great. I'd love to have, more bands have the opportunity to play, but like any excuse to, like, I don't know, get together is always great, especially when it's like, I don't know, around something creative.
Of course. Tell me about a little bit about the selection you put together for the show. I'm stoked. I like how you did sections because then.
I mean, in keeping like with what I was just saying about like trying to be engaged with current art, it's like I try to put a lot of current things on there. So it starts off with Truth Cult, who put out a record in May, who were I don't know if they were touring into quarantine or if their tour just got canceled, but they were like ready to hit the road on this new record that's awesome, and it got cut short. And it's like they're a band who is amazing, and they're super good live, and I hope that this record catches on and people want to see them. Seeing them live, like it's instant fan. Everybody loves them. They're so sick. And it's like the record is amazing, and I hope people like are patient enough to wait to see them live. But they're one of the new bands. Too Free is a band from DC. Carson from Merchandise is in that band. It's like they put out a record on Sister Polygon, and then I also put like a new old Merchandise song on.
Right.
That's from like their demos that they've been releasing. The Lil Baby and 42 Dugg song, I put that on. I was in a car ride recently, and so this goes. I'll kill two birds with one stone with this story.
Right.
So we went to the record store. Went to Pennsylvania to try and secure the record collection of this man who claims to be has the most complete Pennsylvania garage rock 45 collection in the world.
Okay. Is he on Discogs?
No, he is on Discogs, but not his collection.
Got it.
He's like slowly putting it on, but it's like his Discogs sucks. His Discogs is just like Zeppelin records you could buy for like $15. But
right.
So I had never listened to PA Garage before or any like really garage 45s, and we went and I was like, "Yo, you know any bands from Wilkes-Barre?" And he's like, "Yeah, let me get you the book." And he pulled out this book, and it was like Collector's Guide to Pennsylvania Garage, and there's like a list of all these bands from like the mid 60s to late to the mid 70s who are from like Wilkes-Barre. I mean, they're from all over the state, but they're from, like, there's a bunch of bands from Wilkes-Barre, Kingston. There's a band from Shikshini who went to high school with my mom.
Whoa.
Called Zone 5. And it was like all these things, like this is the coolest thing I've heard in so long, because it's just like people playing music and like releasing a song and that's it. And that's like all you can find by them. And it's like so crazy.
Oh,
I started to buy some PA Garage 45s on that trip, one of which I ripped and I put on the playlist. It's Revolver, Roller Coaster Man. That's a song that I ripped myself.
Sick.
But on the way back, I was sleeping. I fell asleep in the car ride. And my friend Ambrose, my former roommate, was driving. And he was just like DJing through the night. And I woke up and he was playing that Lil Baby song.
Oh, crazy.
And this is the most beautiful song I've ever heard in my entire life. And I hadn't heard it. I had heard it because I recognized it, but I had never registered who it was. And I like wrote the lyrics in my phone so I could Google it later, because I was also too tired to ask him who it was. And so I found that song and I was like, it's one of those things too where I was like, I was unsure if it was actually going to be great when I was fully conscious and I listened to the song. That's my PA Garage, playlist story. Bing and Ruth is on there, who you know me about. I found them on Bandcamp.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
They're sick. That record came out in July?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's pretty new. I really like it.
The Mil-Spec record, I have a song from there on it.
That's one of my favorite records of the year.
Yeah, it's
It's
really great.
and the transitions in the record are great. Like it just feels
Yeah,
like a really big step up for them.
it is like a fully realized vision of the band, and they're like a really talented group of people who are really, I don't know, really well versed in a lot of different things, and this is like the best realization of that, I feel like, so far.
Definitely.
You know, with like the zine that comes with the record, if you bought that,
I'm waiting for
the
it.
layout of the record, the lyrics, the music, like everything about it is just such a complete package, and I'm a big fan of that. And that's the title track, the last song of the record. There's a Red Eye song on it, which is like a Discord half release.
Mm.
That's just like a 2-song 7-inch. That's pretty cool. A Paul McCartney song, his first song from solo record Ram.
Mm.
I like that song a lot. I don't know. I just like kind of had that one on repeat for a while. I've been digging into like the Beatles solo stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say it seems like you're on a Beatles kick with some of these.
Yeah, yeah. I have been for like a couple months. I mean, Beatles are like really foundational for me. It's like what my family kind of listened to in the house growing up. But I also, when I got into hardcore and punk, I like rejected it because I thought that you were supposed to not like what your parents liked. And then I revisited it like way later. I'm like, oh, I just actually like it. But I've been like kind of digging into their solo stuff in quarantine more than I have been in the past, because I kind of knew like the hits, but I've trying to been like go through all the records.
Mm.
And I think that's a really good Paul record. Max Roach, that song, I heard that on an internet radio show actually. My Ambrose was DJing. I forget what it's called. It's like a New York-based internet radio show, and he didn't play the song. The person who came on after him played that song.
Okay, funny.
You know, I was still listening, and I heard that, and I thought it was really cool. It's like the second half to this this Max Roach song, and it's a percussion ensemble, and I like vibraphone and jazz is my favorite thing. And so it's like a huge vibe lead, and it's just like a percussion ensemble playing just like really nice, kind of laid back, I don't know, like easygoing music. This Robbie Basho song on there is really amazing. That's probably the best song I heard last year. My friend Sam Boston got me into that. Sam is in a bunch of bands. I toured with him in Ceremony last year. He was playing drums and I was playing bass. We did 2 tours with the band. And,
Oh yeah. Well, you were opening for Ceremony too, right?
Yeah. I opened and then I agreed to do the tour as Glitter, and I was really excited for it. And they're like, "Hey, do you want to play bass for us too?" And I was like, "Yeah, that should be cool too." So I did that, and then I did a Euro tour with them, and Sam did both of those. And Sam's been my friend for a long time, but like we really got to hang out a lot on that. And Sam is like one of the best music listeners I know. Super eclectic taste, knows everything. Is like just, I don't know, really passionate about it. And he turned me on to a bunch of cool stuff. And that's like the best song that he played me on the entire trip. It's like a folk song. He got me into John Fahey as well, who's from DC, or from Tacoma. But you know, like the stuff that I never really listened to before. But it's like it's similar to jazz in a sense, I guess, in that it's a lot about emotion and atmosphere, in kind of simplistic terms, you know, like it's through melody and like repetition and stuff. And I'm mostly like listening to music with vocals. I don't think that's a controversial statement, but I was like really enjoying the Fahey stuff, and then he put on this Robbie Basho song, and it just like blew me away. The guy's voice is just absurd. It's so weird and peculiar, and it's like a really kind of like slow, somber song. But it's like it's almost like bad to put it second, because it's like I'm afraid I might bum people out. But it's like just such a amazing song. And then the last song, I think that's the only song I haven't talked about yet, is this Shelley Duvall song.
Dude, okay, so I was Googling all the songs I didn't know. Just to see like what they were released on and like what the story is. And that one was a particularly interesting one because like I couldn't really tell what the origin was, but I know it's from a soundtrack for Popeye.
Yeah. So it's for the soundtrack from Popeye, but it's also in I'm totally blanking on it right now. This is terrible. I'm not a movie buff by any means.
I could just only find it on like soundtracks or like compilations.
Yeah, it's in I heard it in I'm so ashamed of myself right now. It's in an Adam Sandler movie.
Oh,
Punch Drunk Love.
Got it.
It's in Punch Drunk Love. Like out of nowhere. And it's just like a clip from a Popeye movie. And I heard it in that, and the song is like amazing. And I kept listening to it, and then I was on YouTube and I found this demo of that song, and it's whoever the songwriter is and Shelley Duvall, the actor, like going over the song, and like the YouTube video is like 9 minutes long, and it's like 3 or 4 different takes of the song, and I just like I think that the most complete take.
That's
but it's just such a cool, simple song. Something I think a lot about is like how a super simple chord structure can like lend itself to a really simple but like great melody, and this is an example of that. And it's like something that I often aspire to, and that kind of, I guess, like goes to the Beatles foundation, because it's like, I mean, maybe that's a bad example because like the Beatles are super intricate and elaborate in their songwriting, but there's a lot of parts that are just like, with like just a really sick melody over it. And this Shelley Duvall song like is that stripped down to like nothing, and so it creates this like totally different thing. And I love that song.
Yeah, I guess that is some like something to take away from that with like the minimalist kind of production factor in comparison to what you're doing now.
Yeah, which I haven't even considered, but yeah, that's you can do a lot with a little, you know. And I think that's a great example of it. It's just,
yeah, it can be overwhelming to have too many options and too many, like, I don't know. Some of the best like electronic music I listened to was made with like very few channels. Like they limited themselves to like 10, and we're only going to use these 10, and that's it.
Yeah.
And there's something like something to be said about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's I don't think less is more, but I think, you know, it doesn't have to be less. You know?
Just making those few elements like really good.
Yeah. I like constraints in certain areas.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I agree.
You know, I like to fiddle with stuff. I like to make noise. But when there's only, you know, so many instruments or so many ideas or so many seconds, it makes you think in a different way that it doesn't always lead to good work, but it, you know,
it's a good challenge for when you're feeling stuck or like, I don't know, it can be a good thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Are you currently working on anything that you can talk about that's like going to come out or anything like that? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I mean, I have finished a record.
Cool.
And it'll be coming out early next year.
Exciting.
There'll be like a formal announcement somewhat soon.
For sure.
But yeah, you know, I'm always trying to just keep writing music. So totally. It's hopefully the goal is to, I don't know, I don't really care about I don't care about being necessarily prolific, but I also don't care about the album cycle. So trying to figure out a way to disrupt both. And the way that I've been figuring is just keep writing music and keep releasing it. And so I'm going to try and keep doing that.
I'm going to ask a question just for myself.
Okay.
Just something I'm curious about. Like a lot of bands seem to stick with this like permanent set list that changes a little bit, but like, I don't know, there were always some wild cards like over the course of all of those shows, and I thought that was really cool. But like some of that stuff, you must be like, how does that go again? Like,
I mean, we weren't Fugazi, unfortunately.
yeah.
So like we had like a tour set list. We would spend, and also the thing is like we really tried hard to like have the set list flow well.
Yeah, of course.
So like, I mean, we like really worked on transitions a lot, and we worked on just making things cohesive and go well together. Probably that comes across in the playlist, like.
Yeah, totally. I mean, when you said that you wanted to work on transitions and like stitch it together, then you already have that like in your DNA.
Yeah, it's just like something, I don't know. I like when music does that, just like pulls you along. There are probably like 2 or 3 songs that we never played live, though.
Hypnotize was one that I always wanted to hear.
We never played Hypnotize. I think.
Do you think there's ever a reason for that, or is it just because like these are like tracks that people like maybe you don't even really know? Or
no, I mean like we would still play like Blush.
Yeah.
I
even saw a video on YouTube where you guys played your Screen Door, which I never thought you did, but
yeah, I mean we played that when Shed came out, but
yeah,
kind of not. But yeah, I think we played that like at a show in New Jersey or something like in 2016 or something like that, right?
But situations like that where is that like a spontaneous thing, like when you're that night where you're like, let's throw this in?
Yeah. I mean, like when we practice, Ben is always my brother and drummer is always like an advocate for throwing in something like old and weird, and he'll always just like throw out a song at practice and be like, let's play this. And oftentimes it's just like to see if we can remember it. And the thing is like some songs we can like get through no problem, and some songs like take relearning, and that's the kind of like game that you have to play. Like we would always try and like play different stuff to make it fun for ourselves, but also like, I don't know, to just do to like not have a boring repetitive show that people would see. We had to like find the line of like not spending too much work on like having to relearn a song and being able to do something that's fresh.
Were there any songs that you like debated playing live but just like didn't get around to it or something?
There's a song on Hyperview that we didn't play, I don't think.
Oh, New Vision, probably.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I don't think we ever played New Vision. I feel like both of those songs were songs that we would like throw around the idea of playing, and Jamie would just be like, I don't feel like singing that. And you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably like kind of intimidating to play a song like that, and it might just like fall flat or something like that, or you look in the crowd and you see like the energy dip.
Yeah, it's also hard. Like I feel like in my experience, it takes like up to 2 years for people to like learn songs from a record, which is so annoying because it's like, okay, this is the tour for the new record, and we're going to go out and we're going to play all these new songs. And it's like, people know 2 songs off the record, and it's like, you just want to play every single new song. And it's like, I don't know. The songs
that is kind of weird because like your older stuff just feels so much older to you once you have new stuff.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but it's like the songs that go over well later were not the songs that went over well at the beginning,
Right.
You have to figure out, like, there is a waiting game there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't like the chess game. I mean, I kind of do. Of like the set list creation where it's like, okay, this song's going to like bring it down and then this one will bring it back up. It's like, I don't want to be like that. I don't know.
Yeah, but I feel like you did it in a different way because you were so like conscious of like the transitions and like the flow of things, where it wasn't like we need a chill song after this fast song because that's how it goes. Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. There is like a narrative thread there,
Yeah, definitely.
Like anything like can't be, I mean, I guess it can be all gas, but it's not sustainable.
No. Yeah, I guess that kind of wraps everything up.
Cool.
Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was really nice to chat with you.
Yeah, I love doing this kind of stuff, so thank you.
We'll hopefully catch you in person at some point when
that would be great.
If possible.
Yeah.
hopefully chat again soon, man.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
All right.
Later.
Yeah.